Well, I'd tell you the scene that got all of us, it was tough for all of us to do the Ben Chapman scene, who was the manager on the other baseball team that's yelling at him when he's standing up at the plate. I mean, you know, none of us have heard language like that over and over, take after take after take. It's like, oh man, this is horrible. That kind of got to all of us. And it's I think it's just it's tough for us. I mean, listen, I grew up in Southern California. Okay, Southern California was a whole different ballgame, even in that era, as they expressed with Jackie Robinson growing up basically in Southern California, than it is living in the South. And it still is to this day, quite frankly. But it's not like it was then.
Just diving right into it. How did you come on board working with Brian and on this film 42?
That's a great question. He contacted my agent. I had met Brian prior to this movie. And wanted me to read the script, and I read it, and I absolutely loved the script. I played baseball as a kid, little league baseball. And, of course, The Natural was one of my favorite movies, and he probably, Caleb made me realize there was a thing called cinematographers, because I loved Caleb's work, Caleb Deschanel. And so, here comes this baseball script about Jackie Robinson, who I'd already shot a television movie about called The Court Martial of Jackie Robinson. So, I knew quite a bit about him already. And I loved the script. I just think Brian is a wonderful writer. And he's a lovely guy. I enjoyed the meeting. And he basically offered me the job at the meeting. He says, "Look, I want you to do the movie, so this is it." So I was like, I said, "Brian, I couldn't turn this down. Are you kidding? This is fantastic. It's a beautiful script." And being an American kid growing up playing Little League baseball, it is, it was one of those movies that I wanted. I really wanted to make. So Brian and I, we hit it off. We had a great time making the movie. He has this amazing way of kind of using very few words to get a very strong point across. And he's very cinematic in his writing. So it just instantly grabbed me. And kind of getting through it and kind of designing the look of the movie was, I think the production designer had given him some stills from the era, which, by the way, is one of the most beautiful eras when it comes to design. I think, whether it's clothes or cars or buildings or anything that's kind of designed and built in that era is fantastic. It's a wonderful era to make movies about. And so from those stills started our conversations about what 42 should look like. And, we kind of went down a path for a little while of, does it need to be gritty? Is it a handheld movie? Or, are we making this, kind of movie about this angst person who's angry about the way he's treated in the world? And ultimately we veered away from that and got into more, I think, of a classic style of storytelling and in an eloquent way. And ultimately, I've shot a lot of the world's best athletes. I started out in sports shooting, all of that. And one thing you find about the best of the best, the cream of the crop, is it's perfection, it's art, in the way that they do what they do at the level that they're doing it at. And so I always wanted to portray Jackie Robinson as this amazing athlete who was able to overcome it all. He was born in the South, but he grew up in Southern California. He went to Pasadena City College before he went to UCLA. But then the mom, raised the boys. And of course, his older brother, Mac Robinson, was a sprinter. He was also a great athlete. And he was also went to the Olympics as a sprinter and placed behind Jesse Owens in Germany. He got number 2. He got the silver. So the family had a tremendous amount of athletic talent. And obviously speed on the base pads, which, Jackie was a terror. And so that was ultimately our approach of the way that we shot the movie. I'm very happy with the way it turned out and the way the movie looks. I wouldn't change a thing as I look back on it today of the way we shot it and the way we did it. And I think it holds up really well. So I'm a big fan of the movie still.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And, performances from Chadwick and even Harrison Ford, right? When you see watching Harrison Ford, growing up watching Harrison Ford film from Fugitive to Indiana Jones to Star Wars, Witness, this was probably one of his most important and iconic role, especially some of the lines that he delivers. And that's something I loved about the film is that, obviously it's based on a true story. You're not going to change it, but the message was so strong that do not fall to that trap of being victim.
Right.
You gotta, I dug that so much. You gotta stand up and you gotta keep at it no matter what. And, the world is against you. And it was just, and it was natural performances. And I think a lot goes to the script because, everything was just so spot on.
Yes. Interestingly, the legendary people wanted to make this movie, and they offered it to Brian to write the script and direct the film, and he turned it down originally.
Really?
Yes. He's like, no, I'm not sure I'm the right guy to do that kind of material. I don't know. And so they wouldn't stop. They kept hounding him, and then he went to see his father, who, by the way, is the guy that sings the national anthem at the stadium. It's actually Brian's father. So he went back to the East Coast. I believe the family lived in Massachusetts. I'm not sure, but anyway, East Coast. And so he had to get on a bus at some point to get to the town where he was going. And sure enough, the bus stops, and outside the window is a giant Jackie Robinson billboard. Because they're, still to this day, his wife is running those foundations and he's raising money, for education and all kinds of wonderful things. And so he's staring at this billboard, and it's just like, it's haunting him. It's like, so he starts reading books written about Jackie Robinson and about what it was all about. And it just gripped him, it grabbed onto him. And he finally said, okay, let me write the script. Let me see how it goes. And then he wrote the script. And, it's all there, it's just a wonderful story. And this needs to be told. And so he takes on the job. And then Legendary says, I think it was actually, coming from Thomas Told himself, he said, listen, Harrison Ford wants to be in the movie. And Ryan's thinking, really, what part does Harrison want? And he says, Branch Rickey. And he's like, oh, no, I'm going to go a different direction. I don't see that at all. And they're like, oh, okay. Another week goes by, and boy, Harrison really wants to meet you. And Brian's like, and Brian's a very nice guy. He's like, I understand, and that's great, but no, I don't think that really works. And so another week goes by, and they say to him, well, you're going to have to tell Harrison that you don't want him in the movie. And he's like, I didn't ask him. What do you mean I have to tell him he can't be in the movie? He says, well, listen, he wants to have a meeting with you, and I think you should take the meeting with Harrison. And then he's like, okay. They just finally had to throw in the towel. They weren't going to let up on him. So he goes to Harrison's office, which I believe was, his hangar at one of the airports where, he keeps his aircraft. And he goes and he meets Harrison, and Harrison, is just instantly like this enormous fan for this whole idea and the making of this movie. And he says, here, let me just do this scene for you. And Brian's like, what? Harrison Ford is basically, screen testing, to play Branch Rickey. And so he actually performs this scene for Brian. And Brian is blown away by Harrison doing Branch Rickey. He can't believe it, right? Here's this superstar that you you'd think would ever do something like that, does it, and convinces Brian on the spot that, wow, Harrison can really do this. This is great, and won him over. And so the whole movie was kind of like that, and then choosing Chadwick Boseman, it's easy to see now, after what happened to him in the end, but his career took off and exploded, and he's, was super talented, could do anything. But the time he was, to most of us, first time we'd met him and heard of him and seen him, and he was great. He was great. And I think it was great that Harrison was there, that Harrison was not only a cheerleader for the director, he was also like a mentor to all those young actors playing all those different parts.
Yeah.
And, egos put aside, because if Harrison Ford's going, oh, sure, you want me to try it that way? Watch this. I can do that. Here, let's try it this way. And he just came into it, with a very positive attitude. And anytime he showed up on the set, there was a tremendous amount of respect, and he was very professional in the way he did things. So all these young actors were like, oh, okay. Yeah. If Harrison is acting this, we all got to toe the line here.
Yeah.
And so it was a big help to the actual filmmaker that the way Harrison was there and was such a positive influence on the film. So it's the dynamics of filmmaking. It's so interesting, because so much of it has to do with the lead actors, the director of this, and how that set is actually functioning. And what is the dynamic? What are the dynamics going on? And so for that film, it really was like, this beautiful script that Brian wrote that everybody really wanted to do their best to make that movie. It really inspired a lot of people.
Yeah, and the thing with Harrison Ford is it's the fact that he's done such iconic roles.
Right.
Anybody, it's hard to imagine him in a role like that.
Right.
And
in a supporting role,
Yeah. And when I was watching the film, it reminded me of films like Peter Weir's film, Dead Poet Society, Mr. Holland Doppers, and a whole bunch of those, Good Will Hunting. And Chadwick, I haven't seen the Marvel movie of his, so this was my first film of him.
Oh,
and I was blown away, and I saw Sidney Poitier and Denzel Washington in the making. Like, he had that charisma, he had that grace, and he was a great performer. And it's so sad that he left so young. He was amazing in the film. I love this, and even the actress that played his wife, she was incredible too.
Yeah. Where did you go?
I'm right here.
I know, but I can hear you, but I can't see you. What did I do here? Do
you want me to log out?
We're good. I got you back. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Harrison was also very good about kind of working with Chad and saying, look, this is not a documentary. Okay. Yes, you're playing Jackie Robinson, but you've also got to play him. You got to be Chadwick Boseman, right? Because
Yeah.
you are the star of this movie, and you've got to let your personality come out in this character. And so, people show up to see Harrison Ford right? Depending if he's president of the United States or Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I think was a big help to Chadwick to kind of loosen up and not try to be exactly Jackie Robinson. I mean, he did a lot of things with the bat and the glove and tried to some mannerisms that Jackie had to kind of work into that mold. But every one of those scenes with his wife and all, he has to become Chadwick's version of Jackie Robinson in essence. And so, because he is so charming, he's such a handsome man and so charming and lovable. And because at the end of the day, you want to be rooting for the guy, and so I think it was just a very well performed version of the character in the film. That's that I think if you don't have that, you don't have a movie, right? If you don't have the central character that we all love and want to follow.
100%. In making a decision for, you talked about the style and everything, but when you are looking to in terms of lens selection, right? Like what kind of frame you're gonna go for, what kind of setups and all that. Was that something that you spoke to Brian about often, or was that something completely with your team and yourself territory type of thing?
Well, I think the way I usually approach it, and I believe I did on that film also, was that I discuss with the director and sometimes the production designer, we'll all talk about the look of the film and we kind of get a sense and the feeling of what it is. And then once I get a kind of a grip on, where we're going, then I'll apply, all of my tools in my toolkit to bring that to the screen. So in this case, it was the Red Epic was the camera. The lenses, 90% of the movie is shot on prime lenses. The focal lengths are dictated a lot of times by the scene. Sometimes I'll progression through a movie depending upon how dramatic something gets at the very end. With this movie, being it's a movie literally about color, and the color of the man's skin. And so, where he starts in the Negro Leagues until he becomes a Dodger, there's a color palette that starts very warm and darker, and it works its way ultimately to the end when he's in a very white Dodger uniform. And the crispness of that white uniform, I wanted to really stand out against the black man. And so I used a variety of filters that had a lot of warming quality to them early in the film. And I even when I would bounce light, I'd bounce it off of unbleached muslin. So everything had a warmer feel to it, to the point where at the end I'm bouncing off of a very white piece of canvas as opposed to something that's warm in color. So everything, the lights and even the bounces went a certain direction to get to that point at the end when he became a Dodger. Kind of the lighting was stark, I would say, early on, especially when he comes into Branch Rickey's office. And Brian had this idea where he wanted the blinds kind of shut in the office, and then Harrison opens up one of the blinds, and so it's illuminating this idea, in essence, of this very crazy idea of putting a black man into Major League Baseball.
Right.
So we we exaggerated this idea with light. And so we had, very hard, stark light, lots of contrast, really, chiseling the images out in that office, for, in the bigger idea, the bigger scale of things, of what this really meant. And so, it was like, softer backlights and harder key lights at that stage in the movie to kind of bring out this idea. And also I wanted to give it a period feel, that we're telling this story from the past. And so there is a little romantic idea behind the lighting, in that sense of, the way that we take the audience, from the beginning to the reality of the end, when ultimately, he becomes, a huge hero in this, the game of baseball and the game of life, of what that really meant to, Black people in America, and dealing with racism in America, and how, one man managed to step into that batter's box with 90-mile-an-hour fastballs coming out his head, and runners stepping on his legs with spiked cleats, with these metal cleats on the bottom of their shoes. The abuse that he had to put up with, to survive, and ultimately to earn the respect of the rest of the players on the team and the coaches, and ultimately America.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the blind scene. I actually literally thought of the exact same thing, that it's like, a ray of hope, and is coming through as he's about to just talk to Jackie's Chadwick's character, Jackie. And for me, I mean, there were so many amazing scenes, but I think the most powerful scene for me, and I wonder if it was in the script, was that when in the audience, when I think in the halfway through the film, there's that child who looks around, the white kid who looks around everybody else booing Jackie,
Yeah,
and he starts imitating that. And I mean,
yeah,
that is such a big thing, that how we shape our future generation, regardless of how we behave in front of them. Was that
right.
always in the script?
Yeah, it was in the script because, you know, there's an old saying, nobody's born a bigot. And it's a learned trait that you
Of
get from the
course.
environment that you grow up in. And so I think that worked very well at just showing that idea. The kid knows that something's not right. Like, it doesn't feel right to him, right? But he sees his dad do it, and so he's trying to be, you know, part of the gang, part of the family, part of,
Being
what,
accepted. Yeah.
yeah, be accepted, from his father, and what people believed at that time. So yeah, ultimately a pretty simple little scene, but so powerful,
So
just the
powerful.
context.
Yeah.
They
No,
Brian
absolutely.
worked very hard with the, costume designer, to fill those stands with amazing extras, and the way they're all dressed. It's a lot of work to get all of that, because it's not everybody up in those bleachers, because that becomes a digital shot at a certain point. But for the most part, you still got 100 people around the close part of the camera that you've got to get right. Like, the look of those people is so important, and the way that they're dressed is so important, and their mannerisms is so important, of trying to express this idea of what it was really like to play baseball as a Black man, in that, with that idea, the only Black man out on the field. So it really pays off in the movie. It really adds a lot of detail and a lot of caveats to this idea, and depth to the frame of, once again, the importance of everything from minimum focus to infinity, telling a story.
Yeah. And was there ever a time on the set when it kind of felt awkward, especially when the audience, the crowd was, booing, and they were using the N words and all that stuff? Was there ever a difficult moment, especially for Chadwick and other Black actors, like that ever happened?
Well, I'd tell you the scene that got all of us, it was tough for all of us to do, the Ben Chapman scene, who was the manager on the other baseball team that's yelling at him when he's standing up at the plate. I mean, none of us have heard language like that over and over, take after take after take. It's like, oh man, this is horrible. That kind of got to all of us. And it's I think it's just it's tough for us. I mean, listen, I grew up in Southern California. Okay, so Southern California was a whole different ballgame, even in that era, as they expressed with Jackie Robinson growing up basically in Southern California, than it is living in the South. And it still is to this day, quite frankly. But it's not like it was then. And I mean, it was, it was rough, man. It was very rough. And so, so all of us cringe really when you're doing scenes like that, and you feel guilty in essence as a white person in America, and being a part of that, of what went on, and how long it took to get in essence Barack Obama elected president of the United States. And I think all of us since then have been crushed by what's happened since then, because we all thought that, gee, America has really gotten over that point, and look how far we've come, and isn't this great? And only to find, in the Trump era, that there's still a lot of hostility and hatred and racism, that exists.
Right. One point that you made, which was really good, that not that things are better, but I mean they're a lot better than they were probably in the 60s, right, with the civil rights movement. And I mean, seeing a sign of white only, or colored people entrance. I mean, if that was to happen today, there would be like chaos everywhere. I mean, so we've come far, but progress is there. But I guess it's one of those things where we constantly need to improve ourselves, and I think we'll get there. I have strong faith we will get there for sure.
I mean, it's certainly a lot better, but I get reminded that it's still out there, and people just basically in fear of what they don't know ultimately.
Is it really okay? I'm being like, I don't like to discuss politics, but is it really bad even now in California?
No, it's not like that. No, I mean, I think that it's you wouldn't it would be rare that you would ever see behavior like that. I'm just saying that there is pockets of it that still exist.
Of course, yeah.
And I'll still witness it, more of it in the South than I will in the rest of America. But it's the times are changing. I mean, it's no doubt about it. But you just get reminded every once in a while that there's still people that have a difficult time with it.
For sure. Absolutely. And I think what's also challenging nowadays is media's role. Media has lost so much credibility that even when they're trying to tell the truth, both sides, right and left, they kind of go in completely different directions, and there's all this trust is not there. And I hope that gets right, because journalism pretty much was something that we would be informed everything from there.
Right. And I years ago, I asked my parents' generation, because I remember growing up in the 60s, and I said, listen, there was Channel 2, Channel 4, and Channel 7, ABC, CBS, NBC News. I said, did anybody watch a particular news station because of leaning one way or another? If you were a Republican, watch this. And they're like, no, that didn't exist. That didn't really happen until cable news. And before that, news didn't have to make money. It was a requirement to have an FCC license to require to have a news division. And so the news division, they weren't driven so much by profit. as ultimately they are today, and especially the cable, that they, as you saw with Fox, they willingly lie to their audience so that they can, keep their ratings up high, keep people, buying the service every month, and of course they all get rich. So it's harder for people to, they can't sit down and watch Walter Cronkite, and get that half hour of, update on what's going on in the world. So yeah, that is a problem.
It's also, I think it's kind of like, no matter which side you belong to, like if you go on the other side, people will only want to listen to what they agree with. And that reinforces into them over and over again, and they become more on that side, regardless of which side. I at least find that. And it's the same thing with algorithm. Like if you go on,
Algorithm is a big problem.
social media, like I actually did this.
Algorithm is the biggest part of the problem, I think. I think that they're going to have to
100%.
outlaw the algorithm.
I did this. I did this test for 2 weeks. 1 week I started watching all left media, and my whole thinking became left. And then next week I started watching right, and I became right. And then I stopped. I'm like, I can't take this. This is too much, right? It just
Right.
It really plays with your mind, and that's what's happening. It's not in America. I think it's happening all across the world now.
Right. Right. I mean, listen, it's like on your phone. If you book a flight to a specific town and look for a motel, next thing you know, you've got motels from Kansas City or wherever you're going showing up all the time on your phone. It's like,
Yeah.
Great, this is not what I need. But that's what happens, So as soon as you start looking at something, it'll just keep sending you things from that direction. So,
yeah.
And then because ultimately, when JFK was assassinated, I was very young, and my parents were Republicans, and all I remember is how sad they were, and they weren't bashing the fact that the Democratic president had been assassinated. They were very sad that our president, and how impossible that. I can't believe that our president has been assassinated. It was our president still. You imagine today, I think some people would be dancing in the streets. So that's how it's changed.
It's
Yeah. But listen, one of the great things about filmmaking is the fact that I get to work on projects like this, and Contact, and Forrest Gump, and all these different types of movies that we get to make that have something to say about the condition of the world. I think we're very fortunate to be able to do it on such a grand scale. And in essence, speak truth. Whatever, because we always strive for, and I do in my cinematography, is I strive for truth in the story that I'm telling. And the characters and the actors, they do the same thing. I mean, they're always striving to make those lines believable, and get it right, as do the writers and the directors. They're trying to get it right. They're trying to get that story told and make it believable. And so, in some ways, we tell more truth than the news does about the human condition and about what's going on or what happened.
It's so true. I two of the most recent films that I directed, feature documentaries, they were pretty much about the political nature of certain human rights issue, and there's this side and there's that side. And on one of my films called Citizen of Moria, I went to Greece. We started filming, and I had only come to knowledge about what was going on from media, that how refugees are being treated really badly and this and that. And that's the mindset that I went in with. And then when I went to the town and I started talking to the locals who are being shown by the media that they're, really terrible people and this and that, I completely I had this realization. I'm like, I need to have at least one or two people from that part of the world to share their angle, and then let the audience figure out whatever the truth is. And just to vilify a group of people because, like you said, you're not born a bigot, right? You have to. We just need to, and that you're right. Cinema does make you tell the truth if you choose to do so, and it's so important. We do tell more truth than the media does, unfortunately. It should be the other way around, if
Should be
anything.
the other way around. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a dramatic film. I mean, a lot of times we're, doing things for the drama, but ultimately to get it right, a lot of times there's a lot of truth in it.
Yeah. Going back to 42, do you recall any not necessarily challenges, but anything that technically was not going the way you wanted on a certain scene, light-wise, or what you were aiming for wasn't coming out?
Um, you know, you always have to, on the day, because of the weather, whatever, or somebody not showing up to work or whatever it may be, you're always adapting to the situation and making the best of the situation. And a lot of times it's a compromise. And then sometimes those compromises end up being better than the original plan.
200%.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. We had to shoot the scene where Branch Rickey tells Chadwick that he's going to pick up his contract and he's going to travel north with the team.
Yeah.
And Harrison's standing out on an empty baseball field, and Chadwick enters from the dugout, coming from the locker room or something. Comes out and he meets him up on the field. Well, by the time we got to that scene, we didn't have maybe an hour of daylight left to shoot the whole scene. And so I thought about it and where the light was and where the sun was going down and the angles we kind of needed to tell that story, and doing it, not just set up 3 cameras and shoot it, but do it in a way that added a little bit more cinematic quality to it. I ended up setting up, I believe it was 2 cranes on track. Maybe a dolly and a crane. If we had 2 cranes, I would have had 2 cranes on it, I think. But ultimately, what I did was I shot it at both sides of the coverage at the same time, so that the cranes and the camera angles would travel, but they would travel from both sides. So it'd be, in essence, an over Harrison onto Chadwick, over Chadwick onto Harrison, but in wide, and they slowly drifted in together. They slowly drifted in until they could get, both sides of the coverage, and ultimately, kind of a way to pay off the shot at the end of it. Ultimately, knowing that at the very end, I'm going to go inside the dugout and shoot the back angle to see him run out and see him together to set it up and maybe to finish it off, right? So you've got that kind of angle that you're going to throw in your pocket once you get the drama, get the words, get the 2 of them, get the performance. So it ended up, I thought, playing really well in the scene. It's just kind of very organic. It doesn't really bring a lot of attention to itself, yet it has this kind of nice feel, this nice dramatic build of what's really happening, and what really is going to take place in the scene. So it was kind of something that I hadn't planned on doing until that moment when I only had an hour left to kind of shoot this scene. And it was the situation, if the blocking worked, then we could pull the shot off, basically. And I ended up operating probably the B camera, and my A camera operator operated the A camera, and my B camera operator went off to shoot, who was my son, by the way, on that movie, went off to shoot some second unit. So a lot of fun, jumping in there and doing that shot. And then, so I have 2 monitors in front of me. I'm watching what the other camera's doing, what I'm doing. And I'm, we're feathering each other in, talking, we're talking, knowing that we're all going to get to two at the same time, kind of pay this whole thing off with this constant drift. For the drama kind of working into it. So make it more cinematic, making, because the background shifts and where you're on the field shifts, and his life is making a huge dramatic shift where he's, ultimately gonna, make the team. And it's kind of a nice moment at the end where, he wants to go call his wife and tell her that it's all happened, It's a beautiful scene. And you can, if you can, shoot something at the end of the day where the lights, like that, it's a bonus, it adds cinematic quality to the shot, what I call it's cinematic,
Yeah,
and so
yeah, no.
that's one of those moments, it's just one of those things where I think fortunately you get to a certain point, I think in your career, you have the experience, that's just in the bank, and you can tap upon all that experience to capture a moment like that. And so for me, that's where I have the most fun kind of doing this. It's just heightening what the drama is and making it maybe just a little bit better with what we can do with the cameras, and keep them part of it and keep the audience part of it, and feeling more of what's happening.
Yeah, there were a couple of shots during when they were running between bases. You literally had them jump over the camera, or the camera was underneath. I mean, that really immerses the audience for sure. Like, I'm not, I mean, I know the rules of baseball. I don't really watch it. I'm more of a cricket
Yeah.
fan. But just, not even knowing the sport that much, the tension that's built because of those kind of shots makes a huge impact.
Yeah. When he steals home and he ends up ramming into the catcher, and the catcher drops the ball, and he scores. And he does literally fly over the camera. So somebody, my son went off and did that shot. That was one of his shots
Oh,
that he
cool.
got to the film. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's Don Burgess Jr. in the making.
He is. He's a first unit DP now.
Good for
Just
him.
finished a Mark Wahlberg movie, and yeah, he's doing great. Very proud of him.
Fantastic. Is that the one on Apple, the Mark Wahlberg one?
No, it's not. It's not finished yet. They're editing the film now.
Okay.
They shot it. Just finished shooting like a month ago.
Yeah, no, the reason I asked, I was in where was I? The Hoover Dam area,
Mm-hmm.
and they blocked the road. The police blocked the road, and there was this car scene with attached to a truck, and they were filming, and Mark Wahlberg was sitting in there. So I was wondering if that's the same one. It could be very
Could
well be
be.
different.
I think it is, because they were in Vegas at the very end of the movie. So I think they did go out to Hoover
Yeah,
Dam.
this was 2 months ago, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So long time ago, I did the second unit on a movie called Cherry 2000, which
Mm,
will be hard to find, but it's out there. It stars Melanie Griffith. And I did a
okay.
whole sequence at Hoover Dam, which is pretty wild.
I'll take a look at it, see if I can find it.
It was it was a movie that I don't even know if it was released theatrically in the United States. It was one of those kind of films. And but pretty crazy. Steve DeJarnett directed it, and Jacques Haken was the first unit cameraman, who unfortunately he just passed away like a month ago, old Jacques.
Mm,
But it was all of us doing, non-union
work.
back a long time ago in the deserts of Nevada. And on the first unit, the loader, let's see, there were a bunch of people on that movie that all became directors of photography, very good ones.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. Oh gosh, what name may come to me, but anyway, it's a very obscure film, but
Well,
might be
the
kind of fun for
poster itself is interesting.
yeah.
Uh, no, I'll definitely keep an eye out and see if I can find it. When 42 came out, the response, I mean, I was checking Rotten Tomatoes and I was checking box office and all that. Like, was the response as much as pretty much expected from you guys, from the audience, sorry, that you guys were expecting?
It actually did, it did very well. It was commercially successful.
Yeah,
And with sports films, you're never quite sure they're going to work out.
yeah,
Because they're not international, it's not an international sport, it's an American sport. So you're never quite sure. But the movie was considered a hit at the time, and it was most reviews were very positive and very good, as I recall. And I think a lot of when Chadwick was really, discovered in that regard.
yeah.
He got a lot of leading roles after that. So yeah, so it was as I recall, yeah, a lot of positive feedback from it.
Well, you know what you should see, since you like sports. You probably are not familiar with the cricket sport that much in terms of rules, but there's a really good series on Amazon. It's called The Test.
Mhm.
It's basically about Australian cricket team's journey, as a whole crew is like following them, playing different matches in different parts. So it's actually really good. I mean, if you're into sports and stuff, but
Oh yeah,
not even cricket, you might enjoy it.
yeah. I've watched a little bit of cricket, but the 5-day test is,
Well, that's what this is about, 5-day
yeah,
test.
yeah,
But but obviously they don't show you the 5 days test, but
right,
nevertheless, great little series.
yeah,
Um, Great. And listen, Don, what I find interesting about your work is that you're, not to say that, by putting a number on it that, time has passed a lot, but from where you came from Back to the Future films,
mhm,
to be working with Robert Zemeckis over and over again and a whole bunch of other films, and working on 42, and now just finished working on here. How does it feel sometimes when you look back at your career when you were just starting out to where you are right now? Like, does that cross your mind? How the journey has been?
yes. I I still go and see the one of the first second unit directors that hired me. He's
Mm,
retired. He's about 88 years old, 89 years old, and he'll still, walk the golf course. And so I'll when I'm in town, I'll drive up north a little bit and go play around a golf with him. And it's nice to not ever forget where you started, because first of all, there's a lot of luck involved in getting to the position that
mhm.
I was able to get to. Um, and when those opportunities show up, you've got to have it in your nature to not be in fear of it, to take on the challenge and believe in yourself. So I guess I would thank my parents for that ability to not shy away from the challenge. And I am grateful for the people that saw a little something in me that gave me opportunities along the way to give it a go. Um, and so still to this day, even as much as I've done, I I still believe there's more Forrest Gumps out there, in essence. You know what I mean? You never stop kind of thinking that you want to keep making movies, and you want to do it at to the best of your ability and still be relevant to the industry and relevant to the conversation of what's going on today. I don't think anybody ever wants to get out of the ring, really. I mean, I have met people that really don't like this, and they get paid so much money they just keep doing it, and so they're not fun people to be around.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like on the last movie we did, on here, I mean, people had a great time making that movie, because we're doing something unique, doing something different, and doing it with a group of people that love making movies. And the next movie is with Chris Columbus, and Chris is still he's fired up as he's ever been. He
Oh, he's back?
loves, yes, he loves making movies. And so he's got a wonderful project. It's all kind of, in a
Yeah, yeah,
holding
yeah. I
pattern
get it.
now because of what's happening with the writers. But his plans are in the script and the idea and the cast that he's talking about. Could be great. Could be great. So you dust off the light meters and pack the bags and off you go. And so, I feel very, very fortunate to have had the career that I've had, to have the family that I have. Also, because it wouldn't be worth it if I didn't have such a wonderful family to come home to and experience it all with. And so, I'll keep doing this till as long as the phone's ringing, then I'll keep going.
No, and I think the key to your success, Don, and your continuation of the work is, this whole idea about money, which is very important. Don't get me wrong, but when you're being driven by money, you don't go far. You have to have that element of that child crazy love about making films, and the money will automatically come if you do good work. And I think that's the reason. I can sense that, and I can see that in your conversation. You just love it. And I mean, people who love making movies, why would you want to quit? I always tell my wife, I have no retirement plan. I'm planning on doing this till my last breath. That's it. I
Yes.
can't retire because I don't know what else to do. What am I going to do sitting around? Like, just work. This is what I love. So I absolutely understand.
Yeah, that's so true. And look, I pulled out the file for 42, and here's, in essence, here's the Bible for that, every scene in my notes, right? So every movie I do this. So, but every movie when I start this thing, it's blank, and I have to stare at it a while. It takes me a while before I can get started putting all of that down, because I've got to get a handle on where I'm going to go with it. And it terrifies me every time. But somewhere along the line, it'll start making sense to me. And it's all about the collaboration with the other people that you're working with on the film, to the point where it all starts making sense.
Yeah.
And with some directors, we get into the pocket a lot sooner. Obviously Bob and I have been doing this a long time together. So
Yeah.
and he's been thinking about it a lot before I ever get involved. So we get into the pocket, a lot sooner. And then on some movies, I'm kind of working by myself. There isn't a lot, I'm not getting a lot of, help there, but that's okay, because that's part of the job. You have to adapt to that particular film and what's needed of you in your services to help make that movie. Because directors are all different sizes, shapes, and colors. It's some are just pure storytellers, and some are just wonderful with actors, and some of them couldn't place a camera to save their life, which to me would be so terrifying, to be a director and have no idea where to put the camera, what's the shot, but it works. I
To
listen to
each
what they
their
say.
own.
Yeah, they work with the actors. It all kind of comes and then, I say, the camera would start right here, let's shoot it from here, and then we'll do this. And there's always a way to do it. It's just a different way to make a movie, but the movie works. The movies will work, though. The stories get told, so it's an very interesting process from the seat that I sit in and see all the different ways that these things get made.
Yeah, no, I bet. And to each their own. Everybody works differently, and I can't imagine how people work as directors without knowing what the camera would do. But if it works
But-
for them in other
Right.
ways, that's fantastic. It freaks me out not knowing if that was that person.
Yeah.
But if it works, it works. That's all that matters.
Yeah, they're not even worried about it. So
Exactly. And
they
I'm the one
should be worried about it.
Great, Don. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
You bet.
Lovely talking to you again, and we'll chat next week.